What's up? My name is John O, and today, boys and girls, we're going to be looking at how we can use frequencies in our bass to evoke a feeling in our listener. Quick recap from the last video, we talked about how low frequencies actually cause an adrenaline rush in human beings. Why is this important? Because if you're a bassist, you'd be perfectly justified in telling people, hey, my bass playing actually triggers a physical response. But seriously though, how do we capitalize on that knowledge without making the bass in the song sound heavy, particularly in a live setting when the bass and the subs can literally move the room? Let's explore how I did this in our 30-second pop hit. Remember, we started the song by asking ourselves, what's the feeling we want to convey? I mentioned this because when I talk about avoiding the song feeling heavy, it's not that feeling heavy is bad, it's just not the feeling we wanted in this song. So when I tell you what makes the song feel heavy, you can apply just that if that's what you want your song to feel like. Coming back to our 30-second pop hit, let's start with the verse. We decided on an upbeat, vibrant feeling in the song. So to achieve that with the bass, I used two really simple tricks. I played a line with lots of staccato notes and plenty of spaces between the longer notes.
This is the verse, I skipped the intro, and now straight into the...
These short notes help to trigger the physical response we just talked about, while breaking up the longer notes prevents the bass from getting too heavy. I'll cover this in more detail in a future video on rhythms to evoke a feeling, so stay tuned for that. I also used an EQ to roll off some of the lows in my bass, just like I did with the kick in the last video. This way you mostly hear the low mids in the bass.
I skipped the intro, and now straight into the pre-chorus.
When I'm mixing live, I can achieve this effect by lowering the subs in the lower dynamic parts of the song, like the verses. If you're a bassist, there are three ways you can apply this live. First, using gear. For example, a simple EQ pedal with the low slightly rolled off will achieve a similar effect. The other two ways are free, which is always a good thing. The second way is you can try phrasings that allow you to play closer down to your headstock. So contrast me playing the second note of our verse higher up the fretboard versus me playing closer down towards the headstock. You can hear that the position closer towards the headstock gives the bass a brighter sound with less low end, which effectively replicates what I did with my EQ. The third way you can apply this is with your right hand. It's really worth paying attention to the different positions your right hand sits in and how it affects your tone. So this is usually the default position for most bassists. And compare that with, for the verse, we were going for a brighter sound with less low end. So playing closer to the bridge will give me that sound. Contrast the two. It's also worth noting that playing higher up towards the neck tends to give the bass a rounder tone, almost like a double bass. It's not too apparent on this particular bass, but you can hear the difference quite clearly on most bass models. So let's contrast the two. In the pre-chorus, in order to set up the impact of the chorus, I just left the bass out. This is a really important and beautifully simple lesson to learn. Often the easiest way to create dynamics in a song, both as a musician or as a producer, engineer, is to simply leave out instruments in certain parts of the song. Just by doing this, when the bass comes back in the chorus, it feels huge. To ensure that the chorus felt like the biggest part of the song, I used an EQ to bring back all the nice fat lows in the bass. But because I wanted to ensure the song never felt overly heavy and it stayed upbeat and vibrant, I used the same rhythmic principles of staccatos and rests that we applied in the verse. The chorus bass pattern was also slightly busier than the verse bass pattern, which added to the higher dynamic feeling of the chorus. Lastly, I boosted the low mids in the bass to highlight some of the natural growl of the bass and to make the notes of the bass cut through the mix better. I did this because I knew I'd be adding much brighter instrumentation in the chorus to add to the lift and excitement. This also helps to glue the bass with the other instrumentation in the song by using the low mid frequencies you can hear rather than just the low frequencies you can feel, so that the bass never sounds like it's separate from all the other instruments in the song. I think this is a really important concept. So to help you understand this better, imagine yourself in a performance venue or a concert hall. The subs, that thump in your chest, that's the low frequencies you can feel, and the notes that you can hear in the bass, that's the low mids you can hear. If you're a bassist, you can apply this on stage again by using an EQ pedal in your chorus or higher dynamic parts. Alternatively, a drive pedal could achieve a similar effect.
Audio Sins.
Hey man, I just bought this awesome drive pedal. I can't wait to surprise everyone in this set. I'll show that guitarist who's boss. No! 1. Never ever surprise your sound guy by stomping on your pedals during your set without informing him beforehand during the sound check. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like a separate series just on sound check since I'm laughing just thinking about it. 2. Never use so much drive that you start competing with the guitarist. When it comes to bass drive, less is more. Always. If you plan to use drive on your bass, be sure to consider what's happening with the rest of the band. If you're playing in a 10-piece band with 2 guitarists, maybe forget the drive because there's already plenty of drive coming from the guitarist. On the other hand, if you're playing with a band with fewer instruments and you're gonna use drive on your bass, aim for just enough so you hear it. Subtle stuff.
This is the verse. I skip the intro. This is the verse. I skip the intro.
3. Never use guitar drive pedals on your bass. Pedals that aren't designed for use with the bass often sound really unpleasant with the bass guitar, and they sap the low end from your bass the moment you engage the pedal, leaving your bass sounding harsh and thin. Lastly, if you plan to use any pedals, be sure to inform your sound guy during the sound check. And as far as possible, try to get feedback from the sound guy on how you sound on FOH or the speakers that the crowd listens to. I hate to break it to you, but to be honest, most sound guys will tell you straight up they'd rather you not use a drive pedal. And that's okay. I strongly recommend you listen to your sound guy. A happy sound man is far more likely to make you sound good, even if it means slightly altering your tone. So go forth and sin no more. While we're on this subject, drive on bass is very much a matter of personal preference, and I happen to like it, so you hear it in a lot of my music. Some people have the misconception that it gives the bass a very heavy rock sound, which it can. But if it's tastefully used, it can give the bass a really cool attitude in the song in other genres too. A good example in R&B would be Chris Brown's Fine China. Interesting to note that this driven bass sound has become quite in fashion in pop music. You can hear it in songs like A Good Night by John Legend, Attention by Charlie Puth, or Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake, just to name a few. There are a couple of cool reasons why this works so well, and there are many awesome applications for you, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on this. The drive highlights the mids in the bass, which makes the listener perceive the bass as brighter and less heavy feeling, which adds to that groove. 2. Usually when you write songs, it's the vocals or melodic instruments like keys or guitar that provide the catchy lines or hooks. This brighter bass sound sort of helps the bass join the club with these other instruments and vocals, which is great because now you can use your bass lines as prominent hooks in the song too. Go listen to the songs I mentioned again. You'll notice the bass notes and groove contributes a huge amount to the song's feel and catchiness, and the drive ensures the listener notices it. 3. Like most modern songs, these songs sound big despite actually having pretty sparse instrumentation. This is in sharp contrast to the super layered wall of sound approach that was typical of rock music in the 90s and early 2000s. Think bands like Nirvana, Foo Fighters, Linkin Park, Paramore. On the other hand, the modern instrumentation helps current pop music feel upbeat and groovy rather than heavy. Also, and this is really important, when you have fewer instruments in the mix, you have more space in the frequency spectrum for each instrument to fill up and sound big. Let me give you an example. If your song's main driving instrument is playing mainly high mids, for example a pop funk guitar that's typical in pop music today, a drive on the bass helps the bass to fill up the space left in the low mids without needing to add an additional instrument to the mix. All this is really cool stuff, right? I think that's enough to chew on for today, so I'll stop here. I'm John O. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.